Okay, I actually have not updated much, but essentially I was on secondment for the past 4 months, and it's coming to an end, and I thought it would be helpful to share some of the insights that I've gained from being in this role. Before I started this secondment, I had quite a number of assumptions about in-house work because from others lah. And now that I've actually experienced all these things myself, I think I have a better understanding, so I thought it would be helpful to share whatever I see from where I was working, although I wouldn't say that it is representative of every in-house role, but this in-house role definitely confirms some of the assumptions that I had. Okay, the first assumption is that the hours are better. I know I did previously mention that okay, the hours are not good everywhere, and essentially there is no such thing as a work-life balance, but I perhaps might have said that too early because so it really depends on where you are in this role and how long you've been also. So initially when I first started this new role, I felt that it was pretty overwhelming in that there were a lot of things to get used to. You need to be familiar with the process and the system and who to look for what, where to look for what, how does the legal team interact with all the other business units and the other project teams. So all these things were very overwhelming, and at the start when you start to do work, it naturally takes a longer time because you're still in the process of figuring out who you should approach, what documents you should look for, and who you can get these documents from. So my impression was that okay, there's a lot to do, the workload is heavy, and you might not get to go off work on time. But over time, as I kind of adapted to this workplace and I become more familiar with how things function here, and also as I observe what time people end work and how they manage their time, then I feel like I've learned to adopt what is the standard here, which is that you don't work after hours unless there is something super urgent. And where I am, the working hours are about 8:30 to 6-ish, so yeah, give and take. And in some sense, the hours are better because you more or less can end work when you finish your fixed working hours. And whatever you cannot finish today, you can finish it tomorrow. Of course, your boss wouldn't be happy to hear about this, but I think that's the way, right? Like, most of the business units also end work at about that time. So even if you send anything out at that hour, nobody's going to reply you until the next morning. So I would say, yes, generally as a whole, the hours are better, although there might be some days that you may have to work overtime or do a little bit more work after hours. So second assumption I had coming into this role was that, oh, there are no deadlines in an in-house counsel role, that you set your own deadlines. That's what I've been hearing from people, you know, that when you're in-house counsel, nobody chases you because now you are the client, right? And essentially there is no client lah. But actually it's not true, I feel, because now you're in-house, now you're legal counsel, and your clients become the other business units of the company. You are servicing all these people and their legal needs. So in some sense, there is always a client, with inverted commas, because they're all within the same organization. But where I am, we also work with other kind of related companies or affiliates, and then they also somewhat become our clients. So all these business units, project teams and all that, they all have their deadlines. And when they have their deadlines, it trickles down to us because for them to get approval, they need to get legal approval first. So if we don't do things by a certain time, then they also cannot get board approval or what other internal approval that they might need to get within their own timelines. So this assumption was false because there are really some deadlines, although I must say that the deadlines are generally manageable, assuming that the business units and project team have worked with legal counsel before and they know how early they should approach the legal team. Of course, there are some teams that are a bit more demanding or perhaps new or unfamiliar with how to work with legal counsel, then they might just come to you with very last minute requests. So that happens as well. And then, so I think deadlines are real, although I must say, generally 90 or 80% of the time, the deadlines are reasonable. Okay, third assumption that I had was that the promotion prospects are not as good as compared to law firms. I think this is generally true also because from what I hear from the colleagues that I work with in this in-house role, it does sound to me that, oh, it's very hard to be promoted internally. And most of the promotion I've seen, you know, in my short like 4 months or 5 months here, I've seen people get hired, I've seen people leave. That's how crazy the turnover is, right? And what I noticed is that it's actually, people do get better positions when they come from elsewhere, even though they're of the same PQE as someone who has already been in this organization for a while. So then it just leads me to kind of infer that, okay, if you are already in here, since like maybe you're a senior associate, it's hard to get promoted to the next position. Like if you're already senior legal counsel, it's hard to get promoted to assistant director. Whereas if someone hires you from a law firm and that person that they hire is the same PQ as you, that person may come in straight away as an assistant director. So in some sense, yeah, I would think that internal promotion is a bit difficult when it comes to an in-house role. I don't know why, for some reason, just approval is just hard to get for promotion. And what I've heard is that, so for an in-house role to advance in your career, you have to jump from one in-house role to another in-house role in a different organization, which I don't know whether this whole idea makes sense. But yeah, that's what I've heard. And I don't know much about the whole jumping thing because I'm not here in the position to jump. But generally, it does seem that it is difficult to get internal approval to promote a legal counsel within the organization. I mean, after all, like my boss has always told me before that as a legal counsel, you are a kind of like a cost to the company and not really a profit or revenue generating unit. So for them to promote you, it would basically there's just very little incentive for the company to promote anyone that is not in the revenue generating portion of the company. Okay, fourth assumption that I had was that the pay is lower. I think generally across the board, yes. This is what my colleagues complain. But I've never, of course, asked for what their pay is. But they have commented that, oh, it's below market rate and etc. etc. So where I am, I guess, yes, the pay is lower. Although, I don't know, it seems like bonus is higher than what my firm paid me for bonus last year. Because my firm paid a very horrible bonus. I don't know whether it's across the board, like across the whole firm, but everyone in my team got the same amount of bonus and it was unexpectedly low, I would say. In fact, disappointingly low. Yeah. So I'm not sure if the place where I'm seconded to actually pays higher bonus than what my team and my law firm paid me for last year. But yes, I think there's some consensus that the monthly salary could be lower. The fifth assumption is that I always had the idea that, okay, when you work in an organization, people tend to be friendlier. I don't know why I had that assumption or even had that thought in the first place. But I think, I don't know how to comment on whether this assumption is true or not because it really depends on who you're speaking to. So when you work in an organization, you actually have to deal with quite a wide variety of people. In a law firm, you mainly deal with peers, you mainly deal with people of a similar background, they all have graduated from law school, and you talk at, basically you discuss intellectual stuff, you discuss legal stuff. The conversations are generally more intellectual and in some sense higher level. Yeah, because people around you are of the same background, except for your secretaries and all that, but most of the time you're interacting with your peers, not so much the other staff of the firm. So that's the environment in the law firm. But when you go to but when you are an in-house counsel, you have to work with your legal team and the non-legal team. Non-legal team meaning all the people, project team from the non-business units, which can be pretty frustrating, I must say. To be fair to them, I must say that the non-legal people are generally friendlier. I don't know for what reason, but basically, I think lawyers have a certain trait, which is that we are all pretty task-oriented. When we come to a meeting, the first thing on our minds is, okay, let's get the task done, let's get this work sorted out, let's do this, chop chop, 1, 2, 3, and finish up this whole agenda list. So that's the way we function, right? Because we are very task-oriented. Whereas I feel business people, they have some sense of people awareness. They're more concerned. They are not just focused on the task, but they're also like, hi, how are you? Thanks for helping me. They're very grateful for what you're doing for them. And I feel like they see you more as a person than just as a machine or just as one component of the company servicing their needs. Which to me is a mindset shift that lawyers don't have. Lawyers see people just as how our bosses see us, which is you're just a tool, a factor, a component, and when we come to a meeting, you're here to do what you're here to do, and it's not about human, it's not about how are you feeling, or thanks for helping. It's like you are paid to do this, so it's a transaction. Yeah, to put it simply, lawyers see everything as transactions, but I feel that when I speak to the business people, I get the sense that they see you as human, and they're really grateful for your help sometimes. Of course, there's some people, but then there are other people who are also task-oriented, although I must say, percentage-wise, it's less. And when that's a good thing about interacting with the non-legal team. But the downside is that sometimes you have to kind of, you know what it's like interacting and explaining difficult concepts to an auntie, right? So then all these business people could be aunties or like, basically they come from different educational backgrounds and all sorts of backgrounds. Like you can be talking to engineers, software people, IT people, and sometimes it gets very hard to convey a message because they're just not of the same background, they're not legally trained. And even if, and not just not legally trained, but they may not even be proficient in English. So yeah, you have to translate English to Singlish, Singlish to English, Singlish to Chinese, Chinese to Singlish, Singlish to Singlish. I mean, you use all sorts of methods to try to get your point across so that they understand exactly what they're agreeing to when they're signing certain agreements. So that could be a bit frustrating because it is different. When you work with people who are different, when you work with people who are not always on the same page as you, then that brings about some challenge. But these challenges, I must say, are not insurmountable. And it's good training because eventually when you face clients, there are some clients who, let's say if they're not legal people, you will have the same difficulties. But although I must say, in a law firm, most of the time your clients are legal counsel, so you don't struggle with that. Yeah. So that's one thing about the non-legal team. And for the legal team, I feel like, oh, it's similar to a law firm. I don't feel any difference. As I said before, legal people will always be legal people. Lawyers are always lawyers. They are the same. It really depends on your boss, who you work for, and how they function around you. I don't feel that just because they're not in a law firm, then they're more patient or they're more like chill. No, it's innate in the person. Where I am at as a secondment, my boss is also pretty on the ball, so I get deadlines, internal deadlines that are more urgent than whatever deadlines that the project team set for their own, I don't know, for either to soothe themselves or just for their own career progression, because they want to seem like, oh, I can hit the legal team and my team is doing a lot of work and we do work very fast. So there's a lot of all these internal desires of the boss that you also kind of have to meet. So this one, I must say, when I interact with the legal team, I feel like it's not much difference than from a law firm, except that I would say at a law firm, generally people are more competent because, yeah, they are used to working hard, working bad hours. Basically, when you're used to the tough life, you become better lah, in the sense that you're able to do more work quickly and think critically, plan your time more efficiently, know more about the laws because of the range of work that you do. So that's, I know I might get burned or flamed for this, but generally people at the law firm, I would say, are more competent. But personality-wise and whether they're friendlier, I think it's about the same. Yeah, they're not going to be any patient just because they have better work-life balance, or they're not just going to be any more lax if their personality is just the kanchong type that wants everything in their inbox like now or yesterday. So yeah, in some sense, this is a bit hard to determine. It's hard to determine whether they'll definitely be nicer or friendlier. It's more important, which is why I also said in one of my earlier videos that the people you work with is really important, because regardless of the work, they can make or break your whole working environment. Okay. And now for my last assumption is that the work is boring. And you know what? Unfortunately, I have to confirm that this is true. The work is boring. The work that you get as an in-house counsel is a lot more low level than the work you get at a law firm, because at a law firm there is range, there's variety, and there's a lot more kind of difficult legal questions that your clients tend to ask you. Whereas in a company that deals with mainly the same stuff, you get generally the same stuff. You deal with a standard template that you have for every engagement with a third-party vendor. So that's your starting point, and then you just edit from there based on what the vendor agrees or disagrees to. So in that sense, there is not much excitement because you are dealing with the same template, and then the other types of work involve like reviewing other like agreements, for example license agreements, and other random agreements that do not go through the standard usual process, maybe because they're just a one-off transaction or one-off purchase or one-off venue rental, something like that. So the work here gets quite standard, quite boring. You don't have that range of variety, and you don't get different clients because the company is your client. Yeah. So this one, I would say that yes, the work is boring. If you're looking for a challenge, if you're looking to grow in terms of your legal skill, I would say in-house work is not the place to be. You definitely grow in terms of EQ and like learning how to socialize with people and deal with non-legal people. I mean, all the soft skills lah. That's where you grow. But I think in terms of legal training wise, I would say it's not a place. To me, it's a place of retirement, a place to go if you want to focus on your other aspects in life, like you want to focus on your family, yourself, your recovery or whatever. Then you go for in-house work, because in-house work is pretty standard. There's nothing that will be very mind-boggling or that will keep you excited at work. At least that's from my point of view. Yeah. So this was what I wanted to share about my in-house work. And if you have any questions, do leave them down in the comments below, because I actually struggle to think of what else would people want to know. What else would you want to know about my entire experience? I mean, if I think of more, I might do another video, but that's all for now. Hope that my sharing is insightful. And yeah, let me know what else you want to know. Bye!